is gonna watch on YouTube, this is Nawal. Nawal is a strength and conditioning sports performance coach, and has an extensive amount of experience, and I'm excited to chat with him and learn more. We was introduced really through Reed, who is our mutual kind of like connection, if you will, right? Reed was on the podcast few episodes ago, and I worked with Reed in his high school career, his first year of college, and then you were able to come in and kind of put the flame out and, I don't want to say fix, right, but enable to improve Reed, so he's comfortable, he's back to playing at a high level. So thank you for that. That's yeah.
No, not at all. It's our job, and I think we have to understand, like, players evolve and they go from one place to another, and they'll meet
That's right.
like-minded people on the journey too,
Yeah.
And so, but he always mentioned you. He always said, "This is what my coach did before."
Oh.
Yeah. So we're always on the right lines.
Well, I think that's what attracted me to reaching out to you to have you on was I wanted to get always want to learn. I always want to get an additional perspective. I also like sometimes my perspectives to be challenged, where like, no, you're not that you're wrong, but this is another way, because obviously the saying is there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Sure.
But when it comes to anatomy and it comes to fitness and performance, we start to narrow that window down, in my opinion, as we age, right? And we try to, right? We're not training a 12-year-old as we are the 20-year-old,
Sure.
and we're not training the 20-year-old like a 12-year-old, all right? So based on athletic maturity, we'll clarify that. But then it's the biggest thing is how the thought process is, comes about. You made a post recently about having athletes in a program. There's a difference between the workout and the program.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we I think accept, like for you and I especially, will separate us from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Especially
100%.
local trainers, right,
100%.
in Jacksonville. So the programming is specific, whether it's through annual, whether it's through macro, right? It's at least there's a foundation, and of course you can adjust and you play along with it.
Yeah.
But the idea is there. Take us through a little bit of like your process as you see someone, how are you walking them through and say this is where I need you to start and this is where we're going to go.
I think you're absolutely right about, like, it does differentiate us from the others.
Yeah.
I think it's
Coffee's good, by the way.
Thank you. It was the closest one from here.
Was it the one around the corner?
Yeah.
Yeah, little cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good coffee.
Place. Yeah, it's nice. But just actually talking about, like, this coffee, right? So it was just the closest one here. I've never been to it, right? But then you look at someone like Starbucks, okay, a really successful brand,
Right.
Okay, and we have to learn from them. So I'm from London, so why does my cappuccino in Wimbledon taste the same as the one in Jacksonville? Because they have a system to reproduce results over and over again, right? And so when someone comes to you, you have to have a system, okay? You can't just go, well, I saw this on Instagram today, or saw this in YouTube, right?
Right.
And that it has to be a systematic approach with these people. There's got to be, say you have an injured person on the table, there has to be a step from the table all the way to the pitch, right? And look, just not in our field, from a structural engineering field, like let's say a building. Imagine there are steps missing. That building's rubbish.
Yeah.
Right. So I actually met a lawyer, and he's one of the detective lawyers who finds out if he committed a crime.
Investigative type of
And he told me that, because I used to tell him that, listen, most of the criminals will lie, right? How do you know if they're telling the truth? And he said, well, listen, we know the story, we research it, and where there are steps missing, that's where there's misbehavior, right? So if they interview someone and they said, oh, what did you do after work? And they said, oh, I went home, made pasta, and watched a movie. So the detective will tell you, like, he'll go, so you stepped out of work and you landed at home, did you? They go, no, I took the train.
The getting digger, the dive.
Right. And they'll go, and they'll know what time the trains come. There's one at 4 p.m., 4:30, and they go, what train did you get? and he says 5 p.m. and they've already looked at the TVs, the CCTV, and he didn't get on the 5 p.m. train, there's steps missing. Right? So you have to have a program, you have a systematic approach to look after these, these kids with potential.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't have if you don't even have steps, like you said, what's your process? I think you're gambling with a person's career, and so and then my step is usually an assessment. There's a very common saying: if you're not assessing, you're guessing. Okay, we need to understand what's going on first, and then you take them through, each step, which is backed by science, and then to the pitch.
Yeah.
And every time they come to a step and they go, well, I'm getting symptoms here. My symptoms are returning on the step. Then you just regress them, then you work on that, and then you build them up slowly.
That
Right.
makes sense.
But look, to me, because I really want parents to understand this, and everything. Like if you was to send your kid to an accounting school, they don't just go to year 3. They've got to go to year 1. And even if they go to year 1, the program in the university will go, well, what grades did you get before? They're assessing you, judging you, and from that they'll take you on.
And that is a great analogy. And I'm going to allure to, I want my child to be faster. So,
Yes.
right? I want my child to be faster and stronger.
Mhm.
The expectations are that the workouts must be intense. And there's got to be a lot of agility ladders involved. And there's got to be a lot of, not a lot of rest. And not, right? There's a perception of how to actually, build true speed and how to build endurance. Like, there's phases, right? And getting parents to understand that it is a difficult task. I think the athlete would understand it a little more if it's explained to them. Right? Hey, this is the reason why we're doing this, right? We're gonna take you through this. You're gonna go 20 meters. You're gonna do a 20-meter. I use what's called like a RAST sometimes in testing. Well, it's not popular here, but maybe I think it's more popular in Europe,
Sure.
right? RAST testing. So it's repetitive anaerobic speed test. In 20 meters, that gives us a foundation.
Sure.
Even for VO2 max testing. Parents may be watching, like, oh, this is great. And then the next session, they don't see the same intensity. And they're like, well, we have to work on technique. There's a lot of things wrong. We watch their gait. Okay, so they don't stick with it. As soon as soccer season comes, it's all soccer, no training.
Sure.
And that's the thing, that's the biggest mistake. So for you to put that analogy in that perspective is wise.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to study sports therapy, right? And so I wanted to work with injured players and stuff. My first year, didn't see a single person. I was just understanding anatomy and physiology.
Yeah.
Right? So, some of the proper Olympic lifters, like you look at the Russians, their kids are just cleaning and pressing a dowel rod.
Right.
Right? And so, but over here, I see a lot of evidence of people missing out steps and going to really advanced exercises.
Right.
And they weren't talking about kids who don't even have a training age, and they're doing like very advanced stuff.
Yes, and I think what you're referring to is a common practice in the United States, right? Where it's incoming 9th grader, no training experience, and we're gonna have them clean and jerk. And I just said this the other day. They look like the letter C, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to pull the bar up, and the bar up. They get it up, and their knees are, the valgus is so stressful, and trying to throw the bar up. It's not wise.
No.
Not is it not wise. It's not thoughtful, right? But again.
But it's sexy. It's impressive.
Yes.
And the public are buying into it, right? And I've seen your posts and stuff, and that's why I'm here, because I believe in it and share your same values.
Thank you.
And it's a long-term game, There's no way I'm going to learn marketing in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. And over here, I see a lot of this 4-week program, and I'm thinking, okay, you say you got your result, But I'm thinking, how are you creating habits in 4 weeks? How are you creating behavioral changes in 4 weeks? How are
Difficult.
you creating a lifestyle routine? You know? And so, but you know what? Like, the more people like us get together,
Yes.
yeah, we can now
Nitpick.
share
Yeah.
and
Brains.
educate,
That's
yeah?
right.
So
Absolutely.
essentially, I do think everyone is doing their best, right? And I think you just have to go, all right, who do I want to go on this journey with?
Mm.
You know, and so that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think, and I appreciate that. It means a lot. Um, because where you come from, it's right. I've been talking about long-term athletic development since our inception,
Mm.
and that's not a common practice in America, right? It's big in Canada, it's in Europe,
Yeah.
it's Australia, it's everywhere else. I think really, but here.
You know, there's a really um, he's a big strength and conditioning guy and a performance guy. Dan Pfaff is the track guru, right? And he's American, right? So it's not me who said it. So he said that every American parent wants the best 12-year-old, right? And he's like, what's the point on that, right?
Right.
Because it's because they go to the Olympics in the 20s and so, but we all want the best 13-year-old, right? And I'm so glad he said that,
Yeah.
because
They're 12.
Yeah, yeah. It's like saying he's the best doctor and he's 12 years old. How? Can't even happen.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, and so it is unfortunately a long-term thing, just like most things in life.
Yeah.
You know, even like Beethoven, they say he was a genius, right? But according to Malcolm Gladwell, who talks about the 10,000 rules, he was a late bloomer because it took him like 12 years. He started at 7 and only really started getting at
That's
18,
right.
19. So like, so yeah, even Beethoven wasn't born overnight and,
Right.
and became amazing at 12, 13.
But I think that's what a little bit of social media is, right?
Yeah.
We get to see the instant
Mhm.
of this person being
Yeah,
great, but we didn't see their journey
yeah,
to get to that.
yeah.
I don't count TikTok, right?
Mhm.
Because you can be a TikTok celebrity
Yeah,
or star, right? And maybe they put out 10 posts and they finally picked it up and they're instant
Mhm.
famous. But as an athlete, you don't get to see the days in, the days out.
Mm.
You get to, unless they're documenting their entire life,
Yeah.
but you don't see the failures.
Mhm.
We always get to see the successes
Yeah.
on social media. And sometimes the failures, we see a little bit, maybe through like Olympic lifting, oh, they missed it, okay, next time. But we don't get to see it in our profession because it's gotta look good.
Mm.
I gotta be right, and it has to look good.
Mm.
Yes, we wanna showcase that what we're doing is in the right movements or the right biomechanics, and what we're doing for our athletes is the best, yes. But the reality is sometimes the stuff content that I record, sometimes I'm like, it looks great, this is perfect, but I won't post it. Sometimes I just won't. And I'm horrible at social media. I hate it.
I mean, that's not our skill, I think the guys who do well on Instagram and stuff like that is actually their skill. They're very good at it. Yeah, but like I do think though, there are more of us coming out. There are loads of good ones coming out, and eventually, results don't lie, right? And I know, like from not just Reed, from like I said, a lot of good other soccer players like Dante, Logan. They have nothing but good things to say, because they know they learned the right principles, and it's still in fashion now.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and I think basic principles will never go out of fashion, and that's why they always respect and always say good stuff, because they knew that they were learning the right things at that time, and as core is still relevant now.
Core is always going to be relevant, right?
Posture,
Yes.
range of motion, and technique. And I do think like what I stand for. It's just getting improved every time I read a journal.
Yes.
Every time I read like the top people.
Yeah.
And so But I am well aware we're also in an environment where it's just go, 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 and this is, I think, a great opportunity for us to actually, you know, talk about the difference between intensity and density. So a lot of people think they're actually training in high intensity, but they're just having more density. So if I got one sprinter to max out, say, 70-yard run, right, fast pace good, and the time says it was the best he did, that's intensity. Then you get another person who is basically doing box jumps, Olympic lift, bench, everything in one session, every exercise you know. So he might think he has more intensity. He just had more density.
The volume in
Yes.
which, right?
Right, so he just did a lot of things in a short amount of time.
Wow.
Right? But that's not really intensity, because I could just get one guy in there who, like, say, deadlifts the most he's ever done for one rep. That's intensity.
Yes,
Okay?
that's right.
Yeah. So, like, first of all, we're getting confused with volume, with just work, with fatigue, and that's not actually intensity. Yeah. And so, and when people start to realize that, then they'll go, oh, intensity is me. I could only do 2 pull-ups. Now I do 3. That's actually intensity.
Right. There's a period of growth
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did something they couldn't do.
Yeah. That's the intensity versus density. I've not heard that before. And I think that makes that makes sense, because when you said density, my mind immediately drifted to CrossFit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Where it's not a knock on, I say this all the time. If you want to do CrossFit,
Yeah.
do CrossFit as a CrossFit athlete. Right?
Yeah.
Train as CrossFit.
Yeah.
But if you're a soccer player,
Yeah.
don't. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. But when you said intensity, there's the deadlift is probably my favorite exercise.
Sure.
And there's whatever variation that we're using. We can make it as the most intense way possible to create the best result. If I put them in a deadlift for as many reps as possible, the density of that could be catastrophic. Right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right? There could be some injuries
Exactly.
that are lingering around that we're not familiar with. But especially if I'm loading an 80% on a bar, all right, as many reps as possible, 1 minute, go. That's your density. And sometimes I will use the term in like you have intention versus intensity, right? There's
Sure.
also that.
Sure.
So I look at what I'm intending to do versus what the intensity should be, and we also, perceived. But I think that's a great analogy,
Yeah.
right?
And you know what? What I've just said about intensity and density is not a subjective opinion. That's actually a fact in regards to strength and conditioning. Intensity is you overcoming the most you've
That's right.
the stress you've overcome. Yeah.
New max.
Yeah. So that's how we measure intensity, right? If it's your 100%, 90% or whatever.
Right.
So if you do loads of stuff at 80%, right, it should be called high density training, not high intensity training. Yeah. So it's not what they think it is. But when we do realize that, I think you're absolutely right. I think the problem isn't, CrossFit, because they have their own culture, they have their community, and CrossFitters do CrossFit, right? Whereas soccer players have to realize that I'm a soccer player, I should be doing soccer training.
Right.
Everything around it, right? So, like bodybuilders are doing bodybuilding, right?
Yeah, good point.
So if soccer players have to find their own training, they've got to realize that, hey, look, the bodybuilders some of them might look good, but I drop a movement on them, I'll know who the athlete is.
That's
who
right.
The bodybuilder is.
That's right.
And so, I mean, like, being in America, I've got to know Tom Brady a lot. Like, if he takes his top off and the bodybuilder takes his top off, most athletes probably want to be like the bodybuilder.
That's right.
But who's the legend?
That's right.
Right?
Right.
Tom Brady, right?
Right.
So it's you really have to think about, like, just gonna be laser focused on, is this gonna help me in my sport? You know?
I'm glad that you put the bodybuilder comparison up, because I would use, are you familiar with Kai Green as the bodybuilder?
Yeah.
These guys always talk about Kai Green and how a wonderful physique he has. And it's not a knock on Kai Green. Kai Green's a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen Kai Green run a 40? Have you ever seen him run a 20? Have you ever seen him do a box jump or a vertical jump? No. He's focused on building his best aesthetic physique he can possibly do. You can have a little bit of the both worlds, but you can't have both. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can look like Kai Green and have a fast, and be resilient.
Kai Green is like, the great thing about Kai Green is that he's doing what gets result for his
That's right.
crowd. And I think our athletes have got it mistaken,
Yeah.
right? And they're looking at muscle as function,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
moving away from movement. But you know what? This is why I actually really respect bodybuilders and the CrossFitters. They stay in their box. You know what I mean, right? And so
Where people try to venture into their box.
yeah,
Yeah.
and hoping they'll get outcome for their sport. You know, and again, when we say this, I know that both of us we have nothing against hypertrophy.
No.
As you know, there's a massive like position for it. But you know, but when these athletes start having chest and bicep days, that's when they're, I think, wasting time.
That's right.
You know, and
Right.
so. But I think the soccer players need to have their own identity, their own gym, they training, and they need to realize that, hey, this is what I got to stick to.
I think as the sport grows in America, I think that there will be, and that's one of our goals, right? Or one of our foundation pieces is that we work with a lot of soccer players. We work with some baseball players. We work with youth athletes in general, but soccer is I played soccer. I love it. I didn't have this growing up. I was told to stay out of the weight room. Don't come into the weight room. You're not a football player, right? You'll do your fitness on the field. Knock on wood, I didn't have any injuries through muscular or ligament. I had a bone, a broken wrist, a bone as a goalkeeper, but nothing substantial. So I was grateful in that. But I can only imagine I kept seeing injuries, and I never really understood, right? As a kid that told us stay out of the weight room, or we didn't know too much about physical therapy. It was odd. Oh man, why is this kid still out? He's out for weeks at a time, and you could never put the two together. It wasn't a community for that, right? Where I think in Europe, obviously, it's been around much longer.
Sure.
Right. Being from London, give us a little bit of history from your life in London to now.
So, I'm a failed soccer player. I tried to go pro. I had trials with a lot of
Me too.
teams. Yeah, and I did end up playing semi-professional soccer, and semi-professional in England, you're getting paid, which I think a lot of players might go through their whole career and might not ever get to that. So it was a decent level. It was men's soccer. Matured me a lot, and I was actually opposite to you. So my father was in the military, influenced me to do a lot of training. I really enjoyed it, but again, what happens when a soccer player starts to train like a military person? I was plagued with injuries. I had a hernia operation at the age of 16, sports hernia. Quite a agile player, turning and twist. I looked for a lot of free kicks with weak core. So I had hip and groin issues, a lot of feet and back issues as well. And so I was the opposite. I played a lot and got injured a lot. And strength and conditioning was coming out in my time, right? But what did I do? I actually did the bodybuilding programs.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a gym, it is the world for bodybuilders.
Yes.
Right? And essentially, they had a massive part in creating a gym environment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. That's right.
So, so how can you not go into that world and pick up that?
Yeah.
So had I gone into, like, say, CrossFit gym, I would have ended up like doing CrossFit, right? So I was stepping into that world, and I put on muscle, and I was thinking, I'm not actually got better, right? And so I then went on a massive quest. I went and became a personal trainer. I worked in in a tennis environment. It was like
Okay.
my first gym I worked for. I also worked at Chelsea Harbour Club, which was a gym for Princess Diana went to that gym. So it was a very exclusive gym, right?
Right.
And so I met a lot of good trainers inside. They were talking about things I'd never heard of, right? And they started talking about like how we would never punch with two hands like this. Like one hand will go forward, another one will create a rotation, and like they started saying things like even a squat back in those days, challenging it, saying unless you're a kangaroo, like when would you do a squat like a squat motion in it on a pitch or a field, and even the fact that they were challenging it, right? And I was thinking, like, don't tell me you can't get strong by doing squats, right? And it's if you want to improve your running mechanics, go and do your running mechanics, but don't tell me by doing your running mechanics you're going to get strong. So I started having those debates, and way back then, right? And I was thinking, wow, this is really cool, because it didn't matter who was right. What was important was what was right.
Right.
You know, and so then I started hearing of like these gurus, and back in those days, imagine, right? No internet, like online courses. I was traveling to America, Canada, to meet people who've had gold medals out of that, right? And paying out of my own money, like flights,
Wow.
taking time off, hotels, and everything. So, but that was the best thing I did. People were really ahead of the game and stuff, I think. And so one guy actually told me, Nawal, if you want to go 10 years back, go and do a master's. Right? So it actually put me off, and I ended up doing my master's at very late. And so anyways, under their influence, I started understanding what strength and conditioning was and what it wasn't, and really, really enjoyed it. And then I got into sports therapy. I was, I started getting players that were injured, and I wanted to help them out.
Right.
And I thought, well, that's too late. What can we do to prevent injuries? So I went in and did a degree on sports therapy, and because I got injured and I met so many physical therapists growing up, I remember looking at some of these exercises and they don't work. I've done all of them. I was like the best student you could get, right? And then the physical therapists will dismiss you, going, well, we've done everything, you're fine. And they kind of haven't, right? So then I went and met more people and who were top, and I don't even say touch wood because I think it's so structural that I have been injury free, And so then I worked with a professional soccer team. We were in the Premier League, and then you just meet people in they're like soccer, soccer strength and conditioning coaches, and even the coaches, like being around them I felt like just that made me so much more aware about like coaching. Did my coaching badges, was coaching too, and really like was in the middle of, because I was probably like one of the only ones who was a soccer player.
Right.
I could understand the soccer coaches' languages, and I could also understand the physical therapist and the sports medicine, the sports science like language, right? So I can and sometimes there was a division, like the soccer scientists going, oh, they shouldn't be doing this.